This is Japi, and welcome to Japi Podcasts.
In partnership with Torrent Pharma by the makers of Nebicard and Telsar Biso, where science meets care.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the JAPI podcast of February 2026, volume number 74, issue 2. I am Dr. Nandini Chatterjee, editor in chief, and I will walk you through this issue of JAPI that has a new look and has incorporated some really interesting articles, including 10 original articles, 3 review articles, 1 point of view, 1 pictorial CME, and 4 letters to the editor. It is my endeavor to clear the backlog, and this issue features 10 articles which have been submitted in 2024. The offerings this time encompass original articles on infections, metabolic medicine, critical care, and medical education. Now, let us begin with the communicable diseases and articles. The first one is bedaquiline related QT prolongation in multi-drug resistant tuberculosis patients, a prospective study by Ayushi Gupta et al. It was a prospective analytical study that was conducted over a period of 18 months on 55 adult patients who had rifampicin resistant or MDR tuberculosis and were initiated on bedaquiline containing regimens. This study highlights that while QTC prolongation is a frequent occurrence in MDR or RRTB patients receiving bedaquiline, severe cases necessitating treatment modification is not that common. Stringent cardiac monitoring, particularly during the initial 3 months of therapy with bedaquiline, is warranted. The next article is molecular identification of Mycobacterium bovis in human pulmonary tuberculosis, insights from a tertiary care hospital in Gujarat. This is by Dipal Bhatt et al. This study found that the prevalence of Mycobacterium bovis is 10% of the pulmonary TB diagnosis. The findings highlight the limitations of conventional diagnostic methods in identifying Mycobacterium bovis infections and demonstrate the efficacy of molecular techniques specifically targeting the HUPD gene for accurate detection and differentiation. Another interesting aspect of tuberculosis is shown in this article. Prevalence of vitamin D deficiency in pulmonary tuberculosis, a prospective sentinel study by Vijaya Shekhar. This study illustrates that 75% of TB patients that they studied had vitamin D deficiency with an average level of 16.68 nanogram per ml. The prevalence of vitamin D deficiency was significantly higher in women compared to men, and all patients with bilateral lung lesions had vitamin D deficiency compared to 59.3% in unilateral lung lesions. Beyond tuberculosis, one article is about drug-resistant HIV. This article, which is called Drug Resistance in HIV Following First-Line ART Failure, a cross-sectional study in India, is by Sumit Arora et al. In this study, they had taken HIV-1 infected patients aged 13 years or older who had a failing first-line ART after at least 12 months of exposure. 110 patients underwent drug resistance testing, and it was found that there was efavirenz or nevirapine resistant rates which were quite high and substantial cross resistance between the drugs. Tenofovir resistance was also found in various groups, and it was very interesting to note that in some of the groups there may not have been any tenofovir exposure in the past. Another study on infections was the clinical and laboratory profile of patients with tropical co-infections admitted at a tertiary care center in North India by Amandeep Kaur et al. This study showed that co-infection with different tropical infections led to various types of complications like acute kidney injury, increased transaminases, and ARDSs, where the prevalence was much more than the single infections. Therefore, it was concluded that optimal treatment for a possible co-infection may well be commenced empirically and early, bearing in mind that an 8% probability of concurrent tropical infections are there. Apart from communicable diseases, this issue of JAPI has many articles on non-communicable diseases as well, the foremost being diabetes mellitus. A study to assess the prevalence, risk factor, and role of epicardial fattiness in prediction of diabetic retinopathy in type 2 diabetic patients was done in Western Uttar Pradesh by Shashank Shekhar et al. This study highlights strong links between diabetic retinopathy severity, poor glycemic control, obesity measures, and longer diabetes duration. They also suggest that epicardial fat thickness can serve as a significant marker for the severity of diabetic retinopathy. EFT could enhance early identification of patients at risk, potentially helping to prevent advancement to the more severe proliferative stage. Another interesting marker of diabetic retinopathy was studied by Sanjeev Maheshwari et al., a study of platelet indices as markers of retinopathy in patients with DME. This study concluded that a significant association exists between elevated platelet indices and the presence of diabetic retinopathy in patients with type 2 DM independent of glycemic control status. After diabetes comes coronary risk estimation in diabetes patients. This study is called the lipoprotein litany augments coronary risk estimation in type 2 DM, a cross-sectional study by Sonali Sharma et al. Now, coronary heart disease risk estimation can be done by using various types of algorithms. The study concluded that substantial variation in coronary artery disease risk prediction using various clinical algorithms is observed in diabetes. The EAS algorithm provides the most robust estimate, and the addition of lipoprotein little a to the risk algorithms augments risk stratification significantly. There were also two more interesting studies exploring vitamin B12 and diabetes mellitus interface. Exploring hypovitaminosis B12 in new onset type 2 diabetes and prediabetes was done by Gyanaprakash B. Karan et al. This study demonstrates that vitamin B12 deficiency was prevalent in 43.4% of prediabetics and 51.9% of type 2 DM patients. No significant correlation was found between B12 levels and age, fasting glucose levels, or HbA1c. Another article about the diabetics who are on long-term metformin therapy also implicates vitamin B12 deficiency. And it shows that as much as 40% of metformin users were suffering from B12 deficiency versus 11.1% of the controls. Neurological symptoms were also observed in 14.4% of such cases. Therefore, it was concluded that long-term metformin use in type 2 DM patients is strongly associated with biochemical vitamin B12 deficiency and increased likelihood of neurological symptoms. Now, this study, which is called to determine vitamin B12 deficiency in type 2 diabetes mellitus patients on metformin therapy by Rakesh Bhadade et al. Is a very important and practical study which we face in our everyday lives. There were few other studies which have tread in a different path. One is the circadian rhythm disruption and osteoporosis in postmenopausal women by Poonam Gupta et al. This study shows that the prevalence of osteoporosis was 32% in the postmenopausal women, which is expected, but there was no significant association between circadian rhythm and osteoporosis. Another study where acute kidney injury in patients undergoing cardiac surgery with the use of cardiopulmonary bypass machine was done by Indranil Ghosh et al. They have shown that out of 200 patients who underwent cardiac surgery with a cardiopulmonary bypass machine, 70 patients developed AKI. Older age and comorbid conditions were significantly associated with the AKI, though there was no association between the type of surgery, duration of cardiopulmonary bypass, or aortic cross clamp time. Another study that has been put in this issue are different methods of low density lipoprotein cholesterol estimation and the impact on lipid lowering therapy by Manish Bansal et al. They have concluded that direct estimation is the preferred method, but the Martin equation could be a reasonable alternative if the direct estimation is not feasible due to logistic constraints. We have also included two studies on critically ill patients, specifically their diagnostic and monitoring aspects. One of them is a study of role of bronchoscopy in intensive care units by M.S. Achava, which concludes that bronchoscopy provides excellent diagnostic yield and benefits in ICU patients with respiratory conditions, and it is relatively safe even in high-risk patients when done by trained consultants. The other one is the inter-observer variability of both Glasgow Coma Scale and full outline of unresponsive scores in forecasting the results in critically ill patients by Pankaj Chenge et al. Apart from these original articles, there's one case discussion titled Catheter-Induced Left Main Dissection by Varsha Rakshita et al. And an insightful article on medical education by Rachel Shushmita Daniel called The Role of Educational Intervention in Shaping Healthcare Students' Knowledge and Universal Health Coverage and Primary Healthcare. So that is all for today. Thank you for listening to JAPI podcast. I hope the articles have been interesting enough. Please remember, citing JAPI articles in your own write-ups will go a long way to improve the impact factor of JAPI. Happy writing. Thank you.